Welcome back, Tentacle Nation. Buckle up because today we're diving in headfirst into the verbal roller coaster that was the March 20th, 2019 BCI interview with former Sergeant James Sanford. And we're not just summarizing it, we're going to listen to it together. That's right. You're going to hear every word from Sanford's own mouth while we walk through the inconsistencies, the sidesteps, all of the gossip he brings in, and the downright bizarre moments as they happen in real time. Want to blow the whistle, share a tip, or just join the movement that's shaking the system until the truth falls out? Head over to the infamousxchief.com, your one-stop command center for everything Tentacle Nation. Want to message me directly and privately? Use Signal, end-to-end encrypted and totally secure. Prefer old school email? You'll find that too. Got a rant, a tip, or a story to tell? Hit the speak pipe link and leave me a voice message. I might just feature it in an upcoming episode. Got a case that smells fishy? Submit it. I read every single one. Want to connect with like-minded watchdogs and truth diggers? Join the Discord community. We're building something big and we want you in it. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to Apple Podcast, Rumble, Buzzsprout, and of course, you're watching right here on YouTube. That's where the full episodes drop, the big episodes hit, and the comments get spicy. One link, every option, theinfamousxchief.com. Be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out. James Sanford, former Medina County Sheriff's Office Sergeant, SWAT guy, drone program visionary, township liaison, and possibly the most overconfident non-witness in the entire Bryon Macron investigation. Let's start with the basics. Jim says he and Bryon Macron were close. Ride-alongs, graduation parties, hugging sessions with Victoria, Bryon's wife. But somehow, when Bryon was possibly being extorted, possibly unraveling, and definitively preparing for what looks like a staged disappearance, Sanford knew absolutely nothing. Really, Jim? He told you about embassy work in Haiti and Cuba with a Marine fast team, but you've never heard of that? You knew everything about drones and SWAT, but that one slipped past your extensive tactical Rolodex. And then there's this, Jim. Sanford claims he was told not to be involved in the meeting with the angry resident at the township hall the morning of Bryon's disappearance. Yet somehow, everyone else thought he'd be there. Costello said it, Rick said it, Linda said it, all parroting the same line. Jim was in on it.
Linda's like, you know nothing about this. This is no.
Jim, buddy, you're telling us you were completely out of the loop, and yet you had the keys to the building, access to the drone arsenal, and bragging rights to call in backup at the drop of a hat. But sure, let's go with the idea that you were just looking for pancakes with Travis that morning. And let's talk about the phone call. You know, the anonymous threatening call that Bryon supposedly got a few weeks before. The one Victoria got wind of. The one that didn't warrant a report, but did get extra patrols. When pressed, Sanford says he assumed it was to a cell phone because facts are overrated. Oh, and let's not skip this. The spotless home office. Sanford says it looked too clean, unlike every other day, apparently. Guess Bryon suddenly got tidy right before his blood was found in the government building. Then there's the insurance scam theory about the missing jewelry, because nothing screams organized crime like fake UPS losses on wedding bands. And yet no one followed the paper trail. Just gossip passed on as if it was gospel.
And I said, you know what? I said, I hate to say this, but you might want to tell LaFon to go get that ring appraised.
But at least LaFon had the decency to tell the truth during his own interview. We heard it straight from him on the previous episode. The diamond was real. So once again, Sanford wasn't offering facts, just recycling secondhand gossip like it was hard evidence. And now let's talk about the drones. Sanford had the drones. He had thermal capability. He was literally the drone guy. Yet when the search began, they used an Ohio State Highway Patrol plane with no thermal imaging. Let that sink in. A guy trained to use search drones with FLIR, the forward-linking infrared, was physically present, had the equipment in the car, and still didn't deploy it. The excuse? According to Setner, the batteries were too cold to function. Now, let's unpack that. Yes, cold weather can reduce lithium polymer battery efficiency, but it doesn't brick the drone. Professional-grade drones, including those used by law enforcement, can be pre-warmed using built-in heating systems, battery warmers, or simply by storing them in a running patrol car until deployment. In fact, the DJI Matrix series, which is commonly used in law enforcement, includes self-heating batteries specifically for this reason. Even if that feature wasn't available, there was basic workarounds. Swapping in a warm spare, hovering for limited intervals. At the very least, they could have attempted flight to cover the immediate area, but instead, nothing. No launch, no thermal scan, no follow-up, just cold batteries and colder logic. Why didn't he push for deployment? Why didn't anyone demand to use the one tool that could have helped locate a body in sub-freezing temperatures? Maybe the same reason no one followed up on the jewelry scam, the anonymous threats, or the township drama. And finally, the tech side. Remember that drone company? The one by a failed alcoholic who Bryon worked for briefly? Sanford somehow knows intimate business details about the failed venture. But again, not one thing about Bryon's supposed financial or legal meltdown. That's what's being purported as gossip.
And I said, you know what? I said, I hate to say this, but...
No worries, Jim. We'll say it for you. The whole interview was a mix of selective memory, small-town gossip, and just enough detail to sound helpful without ever actually being useful. So, without further ado, we're going to go in and dissect this interview, full interview. I believe it's about 52 minutes, and we'll see you in a second here when we're launching it back on our famous Atro AI. So let's give a little background introduction. Sanford introduces himself and his background. He mentions his role as liaison between the Medina County Sheriff's Office and Lafayette Township. Points this out. He's not just a deputy, he's the designated connection to township operations. That means anything important involving trustees or township property should have gone through him. Let's roll into it.
Okay, we're on the tape now. And it is March 20th, 2019. The time is 11:22 a.m. Jim, I introduced myself to you. I'm Charlie Snyder. I'm a special agent with Ohio BCI. And we're presently at the conference room at the Brunswick Hills Police Department. And to identify your voice on the tape and the statements that you're about to make, would you state your full name and spell your last name?
James Howard Sanford, Sanford.
Okay. And is it okay if I call you Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Jim, what's your date of birth and your Social Security number?
March 26, 1964, Social Security number.
Okay. And you're currently a sergeant with Brunswick Hills, is that correct?
Correct.
And when did you come to Brunswick Hills?
January 1st, 2017.
Okay. And prior to that, you were with the Medina County Sheriff's Office?
That's correct.
And when did you go to Medina County?
April 6, 1990.
And you worked up until the time that you came to Brunswick?
Yeah, I had 4 days off.
Okay. But, I mean, you know, the transition, you came from Medina County SO right directly to Brunswick?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell me about your time at Brunswick, or at Medina County, what you did at Medina County, just general?
I was hired in as a road deputy, 1997, 1998. I was promoted to sergeant in the patrol division, part of the county SWAT team since 1991. I was in charge of the field training program, the drone program. You know, I was the one that was getting that spun up. Mm-hmm. And I was the liaison officer for the Lafayette Township Patrol between the trustees and the sheriff.
Okay. And did that come about after their police department? Did they have a police department and then the police department was folded? Or?
They did, and they folded the police department. We absorbed their officers. Mm-hmm. They became deputy sheriffs.
Okay. And then they predominantly would patrol Lafayette Township,
yeah.
Unless they had an emergency call outside the...
Correct.
And I think that's kind of a consistent thing across a lot of the corporations that are incorporated into the sheriff's office when they take a township agency
Yes.
over. I'm from Tuscarawas County. I know that there's a little village there, and then that's what they did there. They had Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office provided, I think they provided a cruiser and the uniforms and stuff like that, but it was marked as a Tuscarawas County Sheriff's car, but they predominantly patrolled that area.
Yes.
Okay. During the course of your time with Medina County, did you come to know Bryon Macron? Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
While I was the liaison officer for the township patrol, I was in charge of the scheduling, the township meetings, providing the trustees with the status reports. Bryon Macron was hired by the other two. There was a vacancy in the trustees. So they put in, advertised for the process. He put in for it. They liked him. They hired him. Linda Bowers, the board president at the time, had me go over and introduce myself. Asked if he could ride along just to see what we do, and we hit it off. He was in charge. He was the trustee in charge of police.
Okay, so they had him sectioned off as far as the responsibility. Did he have all of the safety forces or just the police?
Just the police.
Okay. And about when did that happen? Do you know? I'm not going to hold you to hard fast, but just approximately.
Boy. 2007, maybe.
Okay.
Boy, yeah, I that's just a guess.
Okay. How many times would you say he rode with you?
He rode with me a lot.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it a regular thing, like once a month, or?
Yeah, probably once a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would he ride with you the whole shift, or just part of the shift?
It depended on what he had going on.
Okay.
He usually liked doing it when I was working the township. We had 2 full-time officers dedicated to the township, and then there was 9 of us that were, part-time.
Okay.
So we'd work our regular shift and then put in 4 hours in the township, or however long.
Now, would that be like overtime or something?
Yeah, part-time.
Okay. Part-time.
It was.
You got paid straight time, but you just got extra hours.
Well, it was a reduced hourly rate, but a lot of the guys did it because it paid into our regular paychecks, which again paid into
pensions.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I understand.
But he would, volunteer to role play for the SWAT team for trainings, and he was very, very pro law enforcement. Everybody liked him.
Okay. Did he ever tell you about his military background?
He said he was in charge of a fast team in the Marine Corps, and I'd never heard of that. So
What did he tell you fast team was?
He said that SEALs and Rangers go in to rescue people. He goes, fast teams go in to get objects, computers, whatever.
Okay.
And he never. I don't think he was ever in any combat situations or anything like that. But he talked about being in Haiti. The embassy work and stuff like that, and being down in Cuba, but never in any real action.
Okay. Did he ever talk to you about weapons that he had?
He had told me that he had 2 handguns.
Okay.
I remember the one was a SIG that he would say. I never saw them. He'd never. If I would have seen him, he would not have ever been allowed to carry one while he was with us.
Right.
But I've never saw him with the gun. I never saw any of his guns. Okay. Just what he had said.
He told you had 2 handguns?
Yes.
Is that correct? And one was a SIG. Did he ever tell you how he carried them or where he carried them at?
No, he just said they were in the house.
Okay. So he never even told you he carried them?
Never said he carried a gun.
Okay, good. Tell me about the morning that he disappeared from the office, as best you can recall. I've got a copy of your report if you want to look at it.
No, I'm good. I had just told the sheriff the day before that I was, putting my 2 weeks in, and I was retiring from the sheriff's, and I was going to start.
Oh, the day prior? So that'd be the 15th.
Yes.
Okay.
So that morning, we had. that was one of the hardest things I ever did, because Sheriff Miller is a great guy. But I just couldn't pass this opportunity up. So we had SWAT training the day before, and hopefully this makes sense. So while the guys were training, I came down and talked to the sheriff. Went back to training. He didn't want me to say anything. I said, well, we got the whole team together. I wanted to let them know what's going on. So then he called a staff meeting and
made the announcement.
Made the announcement. So the next morning, I started work at 6 a.m. Our patrol lieutenant called me at, I think it was just before 7, around 7. Hey, come and get me. He wanted to go to breakfast.
Who was that?
Travis Colonius.
Okay.
We're on our way down the truck stops. We're going to go get breakfast, and I got a call from Rick, the service guy, and he's worked up. He goes, "Is Bryon with you?" I'm like, "No." Are you sure Bryon's not with you? Yeah, I'm real sure. I'm, southbound Lake. Where are you at? I said, I'm southbound Lake Road. We need you up here at the admin building. Something bad's happened. So I looked at Travis, and we turned around. We headed up there, and he goes, Rick was saying something about it. Looks like a massacre in here. Looks like. So we pulled up and got out of the car, and Costello was there. They're all worked up and saying his phone's in the office. There's blood everywhere, and we walked in, and I just stuck my head in there, and we backed out. I remember I was on the phone calling for Kevin Ross. I didn't even know he was on vacation. I think Travis was on the phone with the sheriff, and we stood back. We got everybody out of there.
Do you recall what the weather was like that morning?
It was cold. Okay. It was real cold.
Was it snowing or anything? You recall?
Boy, I don't remember. No, I don't think it was snowing. It was just real cold.
Okay.
Because then at some point, the bureau guys were starting to arrive. Of course, Rick and Costello was there. Linda Bowers was there, and then Kim was there in the parking lot. And I walked over by them, and they were talking.
Kim's the office girl?
Yeah.
Linda Bowers is the president of the trustees?
Yes.
And Costello, is it Mike? What's Mike Costello? Okay.
And they were saying about the, let me back up. About 3 weeks before that, Bryon had called me and said, hey, fire levy had just passed. He goes, some knucklehead, tried calling Costello and getting him worked up about 1 a.m. And so then he came to me, and he goes, and my personality, he's making all kinds of threats. And he goes, so I told the guy, hey, if you want to talk like this, let's do a face.
So, I just wanted to pause real quick. Sanford casually says Macron received a threatening phone call a few weeks before he disappeared. And Sanford admits he did not file a report. That's a pretty big red flag. A public official allegedly gets a death threat and no official documentation follows. That's procedural failure.
Face. The guy says, I'm afraid if I got in front of you, I'd kill you. And he'd said, so he's telling me on the phone, he goes, can you just put a watch in the house? I says, well, do you want to file a report with this? And he goes, nah. He goes, I get it. He came up no caller ID. You're not going to be able to follow up on anything. But Victoria got wind of it, so she's worked up. And I'm out in L.A., so just put a watch in the house. So I put an extra patrol on the house.
Okay. Do you think it was 2 or 3 weeks before he did?
I think it was 3 weeks.
Okay. And did you say what phone they called him on? Was it on his cell phone or his home phone?
He didn't say.
Okay.
He didn't say. I imagine, I don't know if he had a home phone.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. So I assumed it was a cell phone. So then going back to that morning, when I walked up to them, they're talking about, yeah, you're supposed to meet with this guy, and you know.
So again, he says he walks in, sees blood, and backs out to call others. Would a SWAT trained officer really just walk away without securing the scene? Why wasn't the area preserved? There were no notes, no photos, no evidence control.
Knew all about it, and I'm like,
wait, who said this now?
They were all saying that.
Okay.
I knew all about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, because Linda says, well, I was going to call you. And she goes, I was telling Bryon, have you told Jim about this? Yeah, Jim knows all about it. He's going to be there. Rick tells me, he goes, yeah, I was going to have pull one of the dump trucks out and have you put your cruiser in the bay so he wouldn't know your car's here. And I'm like, that sounds like a horrible idea. I said, I am not a badass, but I can make a phone call and have a bunch of them here quick. Mm-hmm. And Linda's like, you know nothing about this. This is no. So then I find out that Costello, he had told Costello, hey, this guy's meeting me at 8. Why don't you get here about 7:30? Make sure you pretend like you're signing checks or something, but have your gun with you.
He told Costello that?
Yeah.
Okay.
According to Costello. Mm-hmm. Then to find out that he'd actually told Rick the same thing. Mm-hmm. Be there early. This guy's going to be there. Make sure you have a gun with you. I'm telling you.
But he didn't tell you.
I knew nothing about it. The only conversation I had was 3 weeks before when he called me about. And then I find out that I'm not a Facebooker or into that social media stuff. But evidently, when you make a post, it puts your location on it. Mm-hmm. And I find out that when he told me he was out in L.A., he was actually in Houston. Oh, okay. And I'm thinking, what? I don't give a rat's ass where you're at. Yeah. Why would you?
So this is coming in hot with nothing moment. Everyone else, Rick, Costello, Linda, allegedly knew about a planned meeting between Macron and the supposed threat. Sanford says he was completely left out. He's the liaison and a supervisor, yet the rest of the crew is planning to hide his cruiser in a dump truck bay without telling him. Either they're lying or he's lying.
Tell me something different.
Yeah.
So then, then that morning, then you guys kid come in and, we located the car through OnStar. There's some blood in that. They had another, Lieutenant Colonius was with me the whole time. They had another lieutenant that was in charge of the ground search. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because I had the drones in the car with me. Mm-hmm. So you want to put up the drone? No. Highway Patrol's got a plane up, and there was a plane flying. Well, I didn't find out until after the fact that they didn't have any thermal imaging or anything in there.
Didn't have FLIR or anything, huh?
Which I did on the drones. And,
oh, is that right?
Yeah. So when I found all that later, of course, when I found that out, it'd have been too late anyways, because it was so cold out. But
yeah.
Why was it too late? I'm confused. He was missing for 67 days. Why is it too late?
That's things that I would have done different.
Yeah.
Then Victoria, everything seems like kind of like a blur. She comes into the house. That was before we found the car because you'll find out, is your OnStar active, blah, blah, blah. Paul Sismenos, I know, was trying to interview her. She had made phone calls, so all kinds of people were coming over. The next day, nobody had her sign a request to get into the phones. Mm-hmm. And so they said, Jim, would you know the family, would you go and get her? And I said, well, yeah. And she had called me a couple times that night. Jim, do you know anything? Victoria, I know nothing. We're all thinking at this point, fucking Bryon,
took off.
Yeah, we're son of a bitch. So when I called her the next day, hello? It's Victoria, it's Jim. Why didn't your name come up on my phone? And she hung up. So I called her back, and she goes, Jim? Well, why wouldn't your name come up on my caller ID? I go, I'm just in the parking lot going, Victoria, I have no idea. I said, I just called you. I said, I need you to sign a,
waiver,
consent search for the phones, and they didn't get that. And I don't know. I don't know if I trust anybody. So I went over to the house.
This was the next day?
Yeah. So I went over to the house, knocked on the door. She answered the phone, and I kind of pushed my way in. And she was all upset, so I hugged her. Now my wife and I, we'd gone out to dinner with them.
Just highlighting, he pushes his way in, right? I mean, that's somewhat of a classic issue there, doesn't it? I mean, it's basically for an officer to be pushing his way into a residence, whether he knows the victim's wife or not. That's ethically a gray area at best, I would say, pushing your way in.
We were at their daughter's graduation party. They were at my son's graduation parties. And she was very standoffish with me. And I'm thinking...
You mean at those times or just on that one day? She was standoffish with
very that day.
Okay.
Yeah, she never before was she ever like that. Mm-hmm. So I sat down and I said, she goes, I don't think I should sign anything until my lawyer looks at it. I go, Victoria, this is just part of the process. I says, otherwise the guys are going to get a search warrant and do it, but this would just help. She goes, I think Bryon's out there. I think he's done something horrible, and I don't want to put him in jeopardy. And I go, Victoria, whatever he's done, yes, I feel he's out there too. We need to find him. I go, it's 2016. I mean, if you're bankrupt, who cares? If you're out having an affair, who cares? What could he have done so horrible that, you can't go to a prosecutor and say, hey, I was involved with this and want to make it right. And she was just, I got to, I'll have to talk to him. So I went back to the office and said, yeah, she refused to sign it. So they started working on their thing.
So I basically just wanted to pause this for 1 second. I earlier on, Victoria, I think it was actually in our live roundabout, and it's also in the documentation. Victoria did not trust the sheriff's department right away. I mean, it was right off the rip. She was actually trying to make contact with the FBI. She felt that the sheriff's department maybe had something going on or something to do with Bryon's disappearance. I have no idea what her thought process is at this point. I'm not trying to advocate that, but initially she thought something was astray. So there's quite a bit of a reluctance in there. And again, it shouldn't be any cause for him per se. He should just be going through the motions that he should be going through with any other type of missing person case like this. So I just wanted to pause and basically say, hey, you have to remember she had very large spidey senses for whatever reason that something was going astray with Medina County Sheriff's Department.
Your perception was that she was more concerned about causing potential liability to Bryon at that point, and that's why she was refusing. Yes. It wasn't okay. I just want to make sure I got a complete picture.
Yes, because she felt that
whatever he did,
he's out there, and I said I feel he's out there too. I go,
Yeah. Did she give you any indication of what it could have been, or she just thought it was?
No. Now there's he was in the jewelry business, as you know. I had not talked to him. Of course, when we first met, there was, he was always wanting to come out and ride, and then as time went, we'd go out to dinners and stuff together and know the families. But leading up to them, I really hadn't talked to him a whole lot. Not because of anything. I mean, he was busy. It was
just the calendar and the time.
Right. So I knew that he had gone to a different company. And the way he would describe it is all jewelry is either made in China or in India. And he's like the middleman between the jewelry stores. And I know that came up about this new company. And I was like, Bryon knows the business. I don't know the business. He explained to me how he got into it once. And I didn't think it had anything to do with that.
Okay.
But he was always one of these guys that, even when he would be right now, if it was a certain call or, he'd always, if that was me, I would, and it'd always be something way over the top. And I'd look at him, shut up, Bryon. So I had figured that he had run off and he'd made everything look like this because that was just him. He was always saying, well, if I was going to do this, it would be,
the hypothetical.
Yeah, the hypothetical was always, way out there.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, you son of a bitch, you did do it.
Yeah. Did he ever tell you about his finances, his personal finances?
No, he would always talk about, never discussed anything about being in trouble or anything like that.
Bills, anything like that?
What's that?
Did he ever talk about bills, things he owed?
No,
okay.
No. And in fact, we were just talking about investments once, and I remember, I think it was something on the radio came up about, gold, buy gold, He goes, I own gold. I have a couple bars I keep in the. I'm like, okay. I probably could be doing a lot better than I am now, but I like knowing what's coming in. Living off that. But otherwise, there was never any indication that he expressed, hardship or anything like that.
Okay.
I remember with the whole drone thing, the company that was building the drones. In fact, one of your guys was out training with us. But back then, with the FAA, the standards for it, it would have been so hard for BC, because actually the governor and the attorney general had signed. It was just such a mess back then that. But when it looked like this thing was going to take off, he had just stopped working for one of the companies. He started working sales for this guy, selling drones.
Bryon started selling drones? Did he ever sell any?
No, because I think the concept was really good. The guy that did all this, he had a lot of money, but he was also a diehard alcoholic.
Oh, is that right?
Real bad.
Yeah. Is he still in the business?
No. He's lost his house. He's lost everything.
Okay. Who was that?
Keith Thompson.
Okay. Is he local?
He would live down on Seville Road. Where he's at now, I don't know. But he had an office building up here in Hinckley off the Industrial Parkway that I know he lost because of the sheriff's auction. He took it over. And same thing with his house down in Guilford. But that didn't last. And I told Bryon, I said, look, it's a great concept, but we all know he's an alcoholic, and he ran everything into the ground. And then he went back to the jewelry business.
How long had Bryon did that?
It was just a few months. And I know
in a few months he never made a sale.
No, because the only ones that they ever produced was the ones for the sheriff's office.
Okay. So he had to go to law enforcement. It was a classified drone because of the flare and stuff?
That's when they came up with this. Now, this was probably 10 years prior they came up with this concept. And I remember they gave me a radio-controlled helicopter. And I finally said, look, you guys got to make this simple. I go, we're dealing with cops. I said, it took me over a year to get proficient with a helicopter.
The KISS principle.
Yes. So finally they did that. And then they only wanted to be law enforcement or fire. And I think if they would have listened to some of their investors and said, because they had a motherboard that they designed specifically, and if they would have just marketed that alone, they would have took off. But he didn't. He drove. If you know anything about alcoholics, they'll tend to build something up and then drive it right through the mud. That's what he did. But that whole time, I remember Bryon saying, he's not paying me, and he had to go get a loan to pay me for this time. And he goes, I'm all right. He goes, I've got enough for it.
Okay. Because this first I heard about the drones. I've never heard this before.
Oh, okay.
That's
it was just a short time he worked for him.
That's why I was kind of curious about that. It's interesting because did Victoria even know he was working for them?
I never talked to Victoria about it. I just assumed.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we did have a conversation where he had said she wasn't keen on it, and he sold her on it. That look, this is an upcoming thing. This was before all the drone, did boom. And she was like, "Oh, okay," but the money wasn't coming in, so he went.
She didn't work at that time, did she?
No.
He ever tell you about her not working and ever make any complaints that way to you?
No. He would always complain that she wanted to be, keep up with the Joneses. And because he had told me, and I don't know if it's true now or not, but that they had a membership at the Weymouth Country Club, or what's that other one down there in Montville? But that gave them access to the pool, and I keep thinking,
expensive proposition.
I would, but they had friends that were there, and then.
Where's that? The Medina Country Club?
Yeah, no, the Weymouth. It's
Weymouth? Okay.
Upper scale. And then I think he told me they did that and went to the Medina Country Club. So it was kind of a status thing for her. Whenever there was, the kids, anything to do with the schools, fundraising, stuff like that, he'd always bitch because, I know I'm paying for this, and, why are you always volunteering? And, but never expressed any, boy, this is, putting a cramp in our style. Mm-hmm. He always acted like, quit volunteering me for stuff. That type of thing.
Okay. Prior to his disappearance, how long had it been before that you had last talked to him? Do you have any idea?
That would have been when he called me about the supposed...
The 3 weeks before?
Yeah.
You didn't talk to him in between that period of time?
No, in fact, because I was going to call him and say, because my position here, it came up so fast. I mean, the chief and I had been talking for a while, but then things happened quick.
Yeah. And that's the way it always works out, it seems like. Yeah.
And I had not even told him about that.
Okay.
Well, I didn't tell anybody. One other guy knew besides the chief, because I didn't want the sheriff hearing about through the grapevine.
Right. You'd rather go, man to man with him and tell him. Yeah. How about the women? Did Bryon have girlfriends?
Not that I know of, but he would always talk about. He had a brother in Columbus that.
Garen or Darren?
Yeah, I think that's what his name. I only met him once, or maybe twice. But how he always had women, and they'd go down there and they'd go to a strip club, and all the strippers would come back to the house, and they'd, but that was another one of those. I'm looking at him like, shut up.
Yeah.
He talked about some Russian woman that was in the jewelry business, and they'd go, they'd always hook up when they were in Vegas, but that was another thing. The way he'd talk, I'd look at Bryon and go, shut up. You know what I mean?
Okay. Do you know if he ever used your relationship with him as a cover for Victoria? Do you know if he said, "Hey, if Victoria asked you, I was with you last night riding around"?
No, he's never said that.
Okay.
Yeah, he's never said that, but knowing what I know now, would it surprise me if he ever did tell her that? That wouldn't shock me at all.
Okay. Oh, I've been thinking about questions to ask you, and I just...
It's bizarre.
Yeah. How would you describe yours and Bryon's relationship prior to his disappearance?
I would have said we were friends.
Would you consider casual friends or close friends, or like I've got a close friend that I don't talk to maybe 3 times a year. But if he called in the middle of the night and he lives in San Antonio, he said, "Hey, I need you down here."
You'd go. I would say a casual friend then.
Okay.
Because same thing. I've only got. I don't know if it's the nature of the job or what, but I've got very few people that.
That come to that level.
Right.
Yeah. Did he ever confide in you anything about his sex life? Other than, the rendezvous he was talking about when the hookers would go to his brother's house, or...
50 Shades of Grey, when that book came out, and all the women are going nuts. He said, he goes, Victoria, every night, she's reading that book, and then she would,
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if he did talk to you about sex, it was about sex with Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other stuff, like I said, it was always so like
bizarre. Huh?
Yeah, shut up.
Yeah.
He never complained about his sex life with Victoria.
Okay. Did you get my tongue straight here? Did you have keys for the township hall?
Yes.
And did you use that to meet people there, or how was that function?
I had keys.
Probably the guys that worked in the township. They worked the township all had keys, didn't they?
Well, I know at one time they did, and then they got rekeyed, and the fiscal officer was kind of strange, and she was.
Was it Shirley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I was the only one that had to key law enforcement wise. And that was, to go in there to get mail, or, we had our own slot.
Okay, so you actually had mail for the police department delivered there? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or stuff that needed to be dropped off for the, trustees, would go into their slots.
Do you know if Bryon ever met people there, other than this one time that he told you about he was going to meet somebody there? Did he ever meet anybody there off hours and ask you to meet with him at that time?
No.
Okay.
No, there had been some meetings. There were, Costello had a friend that was in that, the speed camera business. Mm-hmm. And I know the chief here was, looking at something like that. And so I was at a meeting we held down there for that.
Yeah.
And I was telling
I'm talking about, non-official meetings,
No.
casual meetings, stuff
No.
like that there. I'm sure they have township meetings like in the evenings and stuff like that there, different business meetings. But I'm talking about, social type meetings or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
no.
And see where they just, you don't have to have front plate on the car anymore.
Yeah. So,
That's going to really deal a blow to maybe the speed camera.
Right.
Now, so.
Well, I remember telling them, I'm like, because Bryon was all for it, and I was like, you got to convince the sheriff, and he's never going to go for that.
Yeah. Prior to his disappearance, did you notice anything, any drastic change or anything in his life?
No.
Anything stand out to you or anything like that?
No, and like I said, it had been a while since I'd talked to him. Mm-hmm. Because Linda even asked me, don't you think that he's... And I go, Linda, I said, I really haven't talked to Bryon as of late.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anybody that Bryon would confide in besides yourself? If he had an issue, if he wanted to talk to somebody, was there any friends that he was close to?
No.
Besides his family members and stuff?
Yeah, I was going to say his brother maybe. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, boy, if we'd have been talking 3 days after the event, my opinions might be a lot different.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Yeah, he never really talked about. I know he was coaching football. Mm-hmm. The younger ages and
like Pee Wee football.
Yeah, but I think it was like middle school,
okay.
that type age. And he talked about how he'd be rough on the kids, and we kept being told, no, you can't do that now. It's not like it was And I always took that he wanted to do that because he had girls and he wanted
wanted the boy side of
yeah.
Okay. I would imagine because of your position there that if Bryon was being pressured or compromised some way, that I would have thought he would have come to you. Is that your feeling?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. Especially if he was being extorted or something like that, I would have thought. Did he ever talk to you about being extorted or anything?
Nope.
Okay. Because I would have thought he would have been probably the first person to come to and say, hey, I'm in a mess and this is what's going on. What should I do?
I would hope.
So. But he never came to you.
Nope.
Okay. Do you think Bryon would have been capable of defending himself physically? Was he that kind of guy? I mean, I know he had the fast team experience.
He was a big guy. I would think so.
Uh-huh. He ever talk to you about being in fights or anything like that? They were trying to establish his masculinity or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
But one thing that did catch me, and again, that kind of goes back to him, going over the top of things. At the sheriff's office every January we'd get teams together and it would be a fitness challenge. Mm-hmm. And we had to pay out $90 or something a person, and then at the end, whatever team won, we'd get we'd all split 50% of the money, and then 50% went to whatever charity we chose. Mm-hmm. So the one year he was on our team with the sheriff, and like I said, Bryon was a big guy. He was, if you look at his pictures from Marine Corps to where it's now, it's like, at what point do you look in the mirror and say, I need to...
Yeah. When you say big guy, you mean heavy.
He was heavy, yes.
You're politically correct.
Yes. But he told me, he goes, I ran 3 miles today. I'm thinking, for my age, I'm not in bad shape, but I ain't going out and run 3 miles.
Yeah. Did you ever see Bryon upset? And if so, do you know what bothered him most? What made him upset? Did he get irritated or depressed or anything like that?
He would get upset with Costello, because Linda Bowers, the whole political game, she's been in a long time. She knows how to do it. I think it's in every township trustees. They get that in their head,
and what becomes their township.
Yes. So Costello kind of fell underneath Linda's umbrella, and that would, Bryon was like, just for instance, and it made sense to me, the whole fireworks thing, they're thinking about legalizing fireworks. So she was, and this is according to Bryon, Bryon, aren't you going to come down? He goes, no, I think they should be legalized. Well, I don't think. Says, wait a minute. Technically, in our development, you can stick your window out, or stick a 30-06 out the window and pull the trigger. It's perfectly legal, but you can't shoot a bottle rocket. That makes no sense. But Costello was all in that bandwagon, and that would frustrate him. That
he would kowtow. That is, Costello would kowtow to Linda.
And if you've dealt with,
I haven't dealt with her yet. I'm going to see her next week.
She's very strong-willed, and Costello is what he is.
Like I say, I just talked to him a couple times today on the phone. So,
you got to love the political correctness. She's very strong, and Costello is the way that he is.
Kind of got my own impression about him. So
yeah, he's a treat.
Is there? Go through my questions I got here. Let's see. So he never really talked to you about his personal life, what he did when he was on the road, except for the few things that you've already mentioned.
Yeah.
About the Russian that worked with him, that he may have hooked up with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even tell you where she was from. It was just I took it as those conferences in Vegas were just a free-for-all.
Okay. And that probably makes a very adept description of it, because I can only imagine what some of those would be like. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think I ought to be aware of? Or
you know what? It's that morning went down to his office. Now, I've been in his office before, and it was, he wasn't a pig by any means, but it was, there's always stuff laying around. You can tell it was a working office.
A working office, yeah.
I remember walking in there going, it was completely spotless. There was no papers, no files, nothing laying around.
You're talking about his home office?
Yes.
Okay.
And I remember going, man, that's why we're thinking he's flew the coop. Yeah. Just stuff like that. Then the other stuff that came out, the stuff he was doing at Target and Medina City, we're looking into buying stuff and returning it. Stuff like that just did not make any sense. Of course, right after I accepted this job, and then all this.
We haven't gotten into that much yet. It will come out. There was a history of purchasing items, returning them from, I believe, his American Express card. I honestly think that he was just trying to get points. All right, there's some discussion I think Cartwright originally had where he supposedly talked to the American Express and they supposedly didn't give you points. But I disagree. Just from my own personal experience, I'm sure everybody has experience with American Express. You purchase something, you get points. They may eventually, drop off or whatever at some point if there's returns or whatever. But, and again, that's just my complete assumption because this was never really looked into that much. But I don't think there was something hugely nefarious with this as they are pointing out. But I just wanted to stop and give a little insight and clarity of what he was referring to there.
Happens. Eric Boers, the other sergeant, is friends with one of the sergeants from Montville who just got married. And a lot of the guys would go to Bryon for jewelry because he said the markup on jewelry is, you go to the jewelry store, you look at the price of what, he goes, divide that by 3. That's what you can get it for. So a lot of the guys would go to him because he would sell to them for cost. LaFawn had bought I think it was like a $5,000 diamond.
So I wanted to pause this for 1 second. So he's going to recount a story about Bryon returning jewelry and allegedly defrauding insurance companies by claiming items were lost or stolen, and this should raise flags. If this is true, this is premeditated fraud. It adds a new angle to financial motives, but also begs the question, why wasn't this investigated further? And as we will find out, or we have actually already found out from LaFawn's interview, it was completely baseless. There was no evidence. The diamond itself appraised. And so, again, Sanford is just operating on all of these rumors or speculations. Who knows where they're even coming from, because nothing's documented in these files. And I just wanted to pause and set this up. Again, we know that this did not occur, but he's going to go on with this rumor mill anyways.
Engagement ring. They'd wanted to...
You mean you paid $5,000 for it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like a $15,000 ring. She wanted the matching band to go with it. Now this is, again, after all this stuff had started, I'm hearing this, that he had, ordered the band and it came in and wasn't the right one. So he sent it back, ordered, they sent the next one. It was the wrong one. And then he's telling LaFawn, look, I'll give you the money back for it. But from what I was told he was doing was he would then claim that it was lost or stolen, and he insured everything through UPS or whatever, so then he'd get reimbursed for it. Finally, she wound up going down to Columbus and buying what she wanted on her own. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I said, I hate to say this, but you might want to tell LaFawn to go get that ring appraised. And, that was another thing. That's what made me think of this, because they wanted the appraisal, and he kept putting them off about the appraisal, and then he stopped answering his phone calls. There's a school right there, 162 and Route 3, and I guess Montville at the time, when that intersection opened up, school hours, they'd be out there directing traffic. And LaFawn had mentioned that Bryon was turning, and he was like, trying to, and Frank completely ignored him. Well, from what I understand, he did go get it appraised, and it was appraised for like $870.
Oh, wow. What's his name?
LaFawn.
And again, I have to pause because it's completely inaccurate and untrue. So even after, when is this interview? Years after, he's still purporting the same false rumors. It's amazing to me.
That's his last name or first name?
Yeah, that's okay. Chris is his first name.
Chris LaFawn?
Yeah.
And he's a Montville?
Yes, Sergeant from Montville Police.
Okay. You don't have to have his phone number, do you?
You know what? I think I do, because I made the mistake at the sheriff's office when they would close, or when the jail would be full. They wouldn't take anybody's prisoners but ours. So Medina City had a incident one night. This guy really needed to be arrested, and I finally went, give him to me. I'll
take it to Montville. Huh?
Yes, I do have it.
First name is Chris?
Yeah, LaFawn.
LaFawn. Okay.
Also Terry Grice, he's the police chief over there.
Mm-hmm.
I know she was watching their baby.
Oh, is that right?
Victoria was, yes.
Victoria was watching Terry's baby?
Yes.
Okay.
I think his wife is a principal at one of the schools.
If you have a chance when you talk to Chris, ask him if he talked to me.
Okay.
And then let me know, and I'll make a call to him. I'll let you open the door for me.
Oh, all right.
In fact, do you see him?
I do not.
Okay. I'll give you another card. So, it's got my cell phone number, my email, and everything else on there. Let's see. Trying to think. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think I should know about?
Boy, no. Everything that we found out afterwards, it was like, I mean, we're all looking at each other like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Never would have guessed any of that.
Okay. Did you ever have conversations with Victoria where she asked you about you and Bryon talking?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever have a conversation with Victoria where she asked you about if you and Bryon what you guys talked about? Do you recall ever talking?
No.
She told me, and I'm thinking it was you. She told me that, well, I was talking to, and I thought she said again, thought she was referring to you about the conversations you had, and that you just responded to her. Oh, we talked about pussy.
No.
Okay.
Never.
I'm going. It's kind of a bizarre.
Never, thing. And I would never. I would never say that.
Yeah. It's kind of. Like I said, kind of.
I always perceived Victoria to be a little flighty. She has a sister. I don't know if you've talked with a sister.
No, I haven't.
She's a complete whack job.
Oh, is that right?
Bryon never liked her, and up until that point, I remember Bryon saying that Victoria has nothing to do with her. And then, of course, after this happened, then she comes back into the, and I always kind of felt maybe because she's a far left wing liberal as you can get. And,
oh, is that right?
And the first time I met her, she had all these Obama things on, and she was like trying to irritate me, and I'm thinking, I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't, don't stop driving anything down my throat. But yeah, I would never. I would never express that to her or any other wife.
When she said that, I'm kind of going, it doesn't even make sense to me. But
no.
So that's why.
And then that morning when she comes in and she grabs it, she goes, "Where's Bryon? What happened to Bryon?" I'm like, "Victoria, we're trying to figure this out."
Yeah.
She called me later on that evening, and I talked to her, and then. And then the way things were looking, I, just stepped back.
Yeah.
And then the next time I talked to her was the next day, trying to get her to sign a consent form, and it was just really bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Have you talked to her?
I mean, could it have been bizarre because you stepped back? I mean, she's expecting you to be Bryon's friend. You were supposedly close with Bryon. So is that a possibility? I don't know.
After?
No.
Anytime after that? Okay. Paul Hartman.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about Paul Hartman?
I don't know him. I know of him. The son, I don't know him either. The thing that initiated him going over to the neighbor's house, I think they initially thought that was going to turn into a SWAT call. So I was called and given a heads up, and then he was taken into custody, and that's.
1311 is Sister Christine. Sister Christine, she's advising she does not need a 27 or a 29. That's great. Go ahead and put me out with 1323.
They got a domestic going on. Got about a gun involved, but the guy's gone.
When you said about going over the neighbors, that was his son went over to a neighbor's, or
I'm
Paul?
sorry.
You're talking about Paul Hartman.
There was some sort of domestic dispute, and he had gone.
That involved Paul Hartman or his son?
It's the son.
Okay.
And that's the court case. I don't even know if that's gone to trial yet, but Hartman stuck his nose into that to the point where it's all. That's another mess. But that's and him starting a blog. I've never met the guy. I've never had any interaction with him.
Okay. Well, you got my card. You got my contact information. If anything comes up, if you think of anything after,
did they tell you that boy, let me see if I get this right. Just across the street and west of there a little bit, there was I think they're Cleveland police officers, or is a Cleveland police officer, that had made a comment that Victoria and Bryon had been out in the driveway screaming at each other on a couple of occasions.
By her, Cleveland police officer lives across the street?
Yeah.
In proximity? Yeah,
in proximity. And I think that's who had made that comment.
Okay.
Which, when I heard that, I thought, boy, that's kind of out of character.
Yeah.
For what I knew of the family.
Yeah. What do you think happened? What's your impression of what happened?
I have no idea. I know there were some things found on the computer, what they could get into, which, right there, there's file sharing with the fellow down the street that was busted for child porn. So I don't know if that, because I would always think, again, 2016, if you're bankrupt, nobody gives a shit. Even if you're a trustee. If you get caught having an affair,
I just have to step in and defend Bryon because he's not here to defend himself. Again, it's just more speculation. There's no evidence whatsoever about sharing of child porn with somebody across the street or down the street. There's no sharing of child porn with anybody on his computer. So, again, just more, and you're more than welcome. Don't take my word for it. Everything's on Discord. You're more than welcome to peruse yourself. But these wild speculations just keep coming over and over again from not just Sanford, but from every investigator here. And you just have to stop and ask yourself, where is the evidence on anything that they are talking about? Financial distress is none. There's no evidence, right? Yeah, were there bills? Yes, there were bills. All right. Again, they could easily be explained away. He changed jobs. His busy season was just coming in, but there wasn't anything significant that I could see. Yes, I believe he had a credit card. I believe it was maybe around $50,000 on it. All right, but again, he was making payments, and it was part of the business. So there was nothing that was showing that there was any type of financial distress, other than the things, these rumors that just keep circulating over and over again without evidence.
But Bill Clinton took care of that for us. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What could be so bad that you would go through this?
Yeah.
One of the guys said, child porn. I thought, that would do it, but I would not think that, he'd have been involved with something like that.
Okay.
And then what I did learn is that there was some stuff. I don't know if it was child porn, but there's file shares between this guy and. I'm like, oh.
Do you know, who's the guy down the street? Do you know?
I don't know. I know our DB. I think they convicted him of having.
Okay. Yeah, I would assume if there's file shares, that means that there's either Bryon was uploading and downloading back between them. So.
Right.
I'm not aware of that, but I'll try to find out who's handling that in DB down there.
I don't. Ross would probably know.
Okay. Yeah. As close as your guys' relationship was, even though maybe not best friends, but it seems to me if he had some kind of trouble from outside, especially after he's got an anonymous phone call and he tells you about the anonymous phone call, if he's having some kind of other trouble, he would have probably told you about that as well.
I would have thought. Yes. My personal feeling is that he had been planning this and used me, which kind of makes me mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I did tell Linda, because they go, we're going to call you, and Bryon said, no, you know all about it, so we did. And I'm like, you call me about everything else.
So Bryon actually told Linda not to call you.
Yeah, because I knew everything. Yeah, I knew about all this.
And that's not accurate in any.
No.
Okay.
And I do know we have video from the market.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing his car pull in. It was right around 1 a.m, and then pulled back out around. I think there was 6-ish or before 6-ish.
Which one's that? Is that the
gas station right there at 162 and 42?
Are you talking about the Minute Mart?
Yeah, that's what it might be called now. It was a Sunoco station.
Okay, all right, that's the other one. That's one farther down the street.
All right, again, he's talking about, and we've covered this already, the video in depth, and you're more than welcome to go back and look at it. All right, he's talking about how he sees his vehicle come about 1, leaves at 6. Then he talks about no other vehicles being present. I'm not even going to feed the narrative to you. All right, I want you to compare it. Compare the actual footage. I mean, all right, I lied. You can clearly see other vehicles, and you can also clearly see that it's not recording in real time. There's all sorts of skippages. There's vehicles that are literally coming into frame, disappearing, and vehicles just appearing out of nowhere where there should be leads. You have no idea the accuracy of this vehicle or if it's actually capturing or recording every vehicle that's passing. But again, this is the narrative that they have sold, that this video is absolute and it gives a great timeline. It does not. All right? Please go back and watch the video if you haven't. The video is horrible. And again, it's okay to use it supplementally for part of the investigation, but to rely on it solely, this is what happens. This is what happens when you rely on it solely. You get these interpretations that are completely false.
I think.
Yeah, up at 42.
So his car pulled in there.
Yeah, because their video of the parking lot from the store, the security video shoots right down 162, and you can see his car pull in, and then several hours later it pulled out. No other vehicles were seen or on that.
Okay. I got all the videos, but I had all kinds of problems with the videos. The videos I got were corrupted. So I sent them down to OCIC. They were corrupted down there. They couldn't do anything with them. So I went back and I got more videos from Ross. I think that's part of the videos I've got. I haven't had a chance to sit down.
No, I was told after the fact because we went through the Stop and Go or Minute Mart in Chippewa Lake. His car, so he went from a direct route. They got that going down Lake Road to Longacre, I think it is. I think there was video of him going past the Village Inn, straight down to the beachside. And then I was told that they had video. There was a house on beachside that had cameras that had a video of him walking down the beachside.
Well, I've got those videos. I haven't had a chance. You sit
and I've not seen it, but I was told that.
You sit there and you look at it for about 2 hours, and all of a sudden everything starts looking the same.
Yeah.
I try to sit there and write notes. I've got a pad like this. I'm sitting there writing notes anytime I see anybody, or see anything on it. So I'm still going through those. But okay, well, again, if you come up with anything, hear anything, think there's something I should be aware of that is pertinent to the case, give me a holler. And even if it's not about this, if it's something else, don't hesitate to give me a holler. Okay.
All right.
I'll go ahead and stop the tape.
Okay.
We only did 52 minutes.
All right, so you heard the complete interview. What are your thoughts? Why didn't he push for the drone deployment? Why didn't anyone demand to use the one tool that could have helped locate a body in sub-freezing temperatures if it was there? Maybe the same reason no one followed up on the jewelry scam or the anonymous threats or the township drama. And finally, the tech side. Remember that drone company, the one run by a failed alcoholic who Bryon worked for briefly? Sanford somehow knows intimate business details about that failed venture, but again, not one thing about Bryon's supposed financial or legal meltdown. No worries, Jim. We'll say it for you. The whole interview was a mix of selective memory, small town gossip, and just enough detail to sound somewhat helpful without ever actually being useful. So what do you take from the Sanford statement? That Bryon Macron was surrounded by people who either weren't paying attention or were too busy covering their own butts to remember what actually happened. And Sergeant Sanford, he's either the most out-of-the-loop SWAT guy ever or he's playing dumb like a pro. Oh, and if you're thinking this all sounds like a one-time fluke, think again. Sanford bailed on the Macron case too. He left the Medina County Sheriff's Office in December 2016, literally right after Bryon disappeared, and took a job in Brunswick Hills. And from his interview, this was pre-planned. So let's fast forward to July 13th of 2024. Sanford was the lead on the homicide investigation of 17-year-old Christion Olson, a declared homicide that seemed to stall out almost immediately under his watch. And then, surprise, Sanford left that case too, jumping ship to the Lorain County Sheriff's Office without so much as a courtesy call to the Olson family to say he was no longer investigating their son's death. That's 2 major cases, 2 grieving families, and 1 common denominator who keeps showing up for the mess, then disappearing before any answers really come. It's less law enforcement, more ghosting with a badge. Be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out.